where she was into a whole new path, a whole new road. And it's been really cool over the years to see Jen and watch where she's gone and the direction that God has taken her. And she has done some amazing things down in San Diego at the University of San Diego campus, working with, I'll let her talk about stuff like that, but working with a great organization down there. And she's an amazing gal. I got to work with her not only in RPM, but we actually brought her on as an intern for a summer. How many years ago was that? Like 4 years ago? So she was actually kind of a staff person here for a while. Intern Jen, the students knew her. And so I just wanted to welcome Jen, and as she shares a little bit from Matthew 5.
We'll get that sorted out.
Forgive me for that. Good morning. Hi. So like Dave said, my name is Jen, and is my microphone on?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Jen, and for those of you who don't know me, I work for an organization called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and it's a Christian club on college campuses all across the nation. And I'm specifically at UC San Diego, not University of San Diego. Come on, Dave. No, you're saying campus. It's a great campus. Basically, I get to work in San Diego and wear flip-flops year-round with an average of 70 degrees, and so I don't have to deal with the heat that we have here now and any of that. And I love it. It's a great job. And like Dave said, I didn't always just live in sunny San Diego. I grew up here, went to Calaveras High School. Had no religious background until I started going to RPM, right upstairs, started going to the youth group, and that's where I met Jesus and came to know the Lord. And I interned here for a summer, like Dave said, and that's where I learned I loved ministry, and I decided to commit my life to that. And so that's why I'm working for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship with the college students in San Diego, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So basically, this church has had such a huge impact on my life, and it is a huge honor to be able to be up here and speaking today. So I just want to thank you guys for that. Before we start, I'm going to pray for us before we get to the sermon. Lord, just thank you so much for everything you've done in this church, even as I was hearing the mission moment earlier and hearing about and knowing about, from my own experience, all the different things that you have done through this church and you're going to continue to do through this church. Just all the things that you've done to bless this world and to bring your kingdom on this earth through this church. I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for the huge blessing that this church is. And I just pray that, Lord, just this morning as we hear what you have to say, Lord, that it's you who's speaking and not me. And Lord, that you will really bless this time. In your name we pray. Amen. So if you haven't been here, and I haven't been here, so I have not been hearing what we've been speaking on, but I've heard what we've been speaking on, and it's the Beatitudes. So the Beatitudes, if you don't know, are basically a list of different things. I love the International Children's Version for the second service. I think they're going to have show the International Children's Version of the passage. It's a little bit more simpler for kids. But I love it because it says, instead of saying, blessed are those who, it says, whatever it is, and then are happy. So the idea of these different things will give you a happy life or make you happy. It kind of breaks down that term blessed and makes it a little bit more understandable. And I really like that. I really like that about the passage. But I'll read it one more time. I know we had it up there earlier. But it said, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And the very first part, I'm going to read the first part of the International Children's Version. It says, those who want to do right more than anything are happy. Isn't that perfect for kids, right? You want kids to really believe that, right? Those who do right more than anything are happy. If you do your chores and clean up and are nice to your parents, then you will be happy. I promise. The Bible says so. It's awesome. But I think that that's hilarious that I got put with this passage because this is literally the motto of UC San Diego students. So UC San Diego, if you didn't know, it's one of the top universities in the nation. Just to get into the school, you have to get a 4.1 GPA. Not a 4.0, which is the perfect GPA, right? But actually a 4.1. You have to get above perfect. Plus, you have to have all these recreation requirements and volunteer hours, etc. And that's just to get into the school. Then once you're there, suddenly you aren't the valedictorian at the top of the school anymore. You're average. So you may have been the valedictorian in high school. Like I was the valedictorian in my high school, and I went to one of the valedictorians, and I went to this college, and then, you get there and you're like, crap, I'm actually not as smart and awesome as I thought I was. And so it's very difficult. You get there, but you still have this mindset that you had in high school, right? Of, I have to do everything perfectly. So I'm working with college students at UC San Diego who think that they have to be so perfect, and the bar is really high. So these students will do whatever it takes to get the best grades, have the best friends, get the best internships and jobs when they graduate. And so they just go nuts. They end up studying. Literally, I know a student who, not even during finals, it was during midterms, so it wasn't even during like the hardest test. He stayed up for 72 hours straight working on one essay. 72 hours straight. Imagine not getting sleep for that long. It's crazy. He was definitely acting really weird at the end of that time. And students will do that, or they'll bring a toothbrush to the library because they know that they aren't going to ever sleep before their test or their class the next day, because they're just planning on going to the bathroom, brushing their teeth, and that's going to be their getting ready in the morning because they stayed up all night. It's crazy. These students will do whatever it takes to be that picture perfect, like rule following, do whatever it takes to get the best grades and do the best everything. And what ends up happening, and all you guys would probably assume this would happen, is they burn out. They end up struggling with depression. A lot of students that I know at UC San Diego are really depressed. All these different things happen. It ends up not being good. And I think we think of that when we think of this passage, when we think of the term righteousness, right? We kind of think like righteousness means being the rule follower. It means being the goody two-shoes, being perfect, having everything put together. It's kind of the term we think about. And then we think about that UC San Diego student, and we're like, we don't want to be that way. Like, let's just focus on the part of God and Jesus that's all about loving and being nice and forgiveness, etc. Let's not focus on all the rule following and that side of things. That's not fun. Let's not focus on that. But I actually want to break down that word a little bit, because in this passage, that word doesn't necessarily mean that. What it actually means, the Greek word that's put here is, forgive me, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but I don't know if any of you know Greek, so you probably won't know if I pronounce it wrong. But the Greek word said here is dikaiosune, which means justice. So it actually means justice. It doesn't just mean all these following rules, it means justice. So what this passage is saying here is that everyone should long for God's justice and mercy. And if you're taking notes, that's my first point. Everybody should long for God's justice and mercy. That's what this passage is saying here. But why is it saying that? Why does Jesus actually say that in this passage? Because we know, obviously, the world is messed up. There's bad things going on everywhere, and we all want it to change. So, of course God would want us to want things to change. We all want things to change. That makes sense. But I think the reason that Jesus puts this here, and this is the next part, my number one point, justice and mercy are Jesus' main priorities. That's why he says this here. It's because justice and mercy are Jesus' main priorities. And you can see that in Jesus' first sermon ever. In the first sermon ever, I don't have it up here, but if you have a Bible, you can open to it. It's in Luke 4. It's the first time he's doing any type of public speaking. He gets up in front of everybody and quotes this passage in the Old Testament that says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Now this kind of reminds me of, and this will, I know you're not supposed to talk about politics at church, but I'm going to go there. So, forgive me, I work with college students, and we kind of go places like this. So I'm going to talk about politics now. But during the presidential candidates, the presidential race, when someone's going to come up to announce that they're going to run for president, if you listen to their first talk, their first speech, that's kind of going to be that's going to be their focus for the rest of their running in the campaign, right? Like whatever they say during when they announce, I'm going to be president, these are the 2, 3, 5 things I'm going to be about. It ends up being what forms the rest of their race when they're running for president. Well, it's similar with Jesus in this passage. It's his first sermon. So you know that when he's sharing this isn't just him getting up there and saying, I'm going to give a nice sermon on a Sunday morning. This is like, I'm getting up and proclaiming that I'm the Son of God, and these are the things that I care about, and I'm going to be taking them throughout everything until I die on the cross. So what he is saying in this passage that he was sent to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, to give good news to the poor, recovery of sight for the blind, set the oppressed free. Those are his main priorities. And the reason that I think that Jesus says this in this passage, that blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness and blessed are the merciful, is because these are Jesus's main priorities. It's something very important to him, and he doesn't just say it just to say it. My second point is justice and mercy are how you love others. They aren't just something that you do because it's a good thing to do, but it's actually one of the best ways to love other people. I think sometimes when we think of love and loving someone, we can think of smiling, or we get up and greet each other, like, oh, hey, how are you doing today? That's being nice and that's being loving. Or maybe taking your kids or grandkids out for ice cream, or bringing a fresh baked plate of chocolate chip cookies to work. And I'm not saying that that's not loving. That's totally a loving thing to do, and that's great. But Jesus actually has a bigger, broader picture of what love means. And what that actually is justice and mercy. And I'm going to give you an example of this from Jesus' life. You can see it throughout a lot of Jesus' life, but here's a specific example. If you have a Bible, you can open up to Matthew 21. Like I said, I don't have it on the screen, but Matthew 21, I'm going to read from the Message version, so it won't be exactly like your Bible. But while you're opening it up, I'm going to give you a little background on this passage. So Jesus, in this passage, in Jesus' time, if you wanted to pray or talk to God, you couldn't just sit in your bedroom and pray. You had to go to the temple. You had to go to a specific location because that is where God's presence was. We don't have that issue anymore because when Jesus died on the cross, we get the Holy Spirit, and so we can pray anywhere. You can pray in the church, you can pray at home, etc. And you should totally pray, and I think they have these prayer circles. Or is that a thing during the service? Yeah, go pray in the prayer circles. If you've never prayed before, or that's foreign to you, what I'm talking about now, go pray in those prayer circles because it's awesome. We don't have to go to a specific place to pray. We can pray anywhere, and they would love to share more with you about that. But you had to go to the temple during Jesus' time to pray. And what was cool about the temple is there was space for all different types of people to pray. There were these different places, these different courts that you could go to pray if you were a certain person. So there was a court for Jewish women, there was a court for Jewish men, for priests. And what was really cool is there actually was a court for Gentiles or non-Jewish people. These are people who weren't Jewish, who may not have a background or a religious background at all, but they could actually come and pray and worship and encounter God in this court, in this section of the temple, which was really cool. But fast forwarding to this passage, Jesus walks into this temple, and what he sees isn't a bunch of Gentiles or non-Jewish people worshiping God or praying at all. What he actually sees is Jewish people trying to sell things to all the non-Jewish people for overpriced amounts. So all these Jewish people are trying to sell these sacrifices at really high rates, or if you need to change money to be able to give to the offering, the Jewish people in the room, they would overcharge for changing the money. They wouldn't give like a good rate or anything like that. So imagine coming in here on a Sunday morning, and instead of just being able to sit here and greet each other, you have a bunch of like marketers coming up to you and being like, hey, do you want to buy this Bible, or want to buy this thing, or want to buy this thing, bugging you while I'm talking up here. That'd be ridiculous, right? Like that would be awful, that would be difficult. So that's what was happening. But what's worse is it wasn't even like, how else it wasn't even Christians. It'd be like if you brought your non-Christian friend into the room, or if you're not Christian now and you're here, that's what it would feel like. It would feel like all this happening. So Jesus walks in here and he sees this happening, and this is how he reacts. Matthew 21:12. Jesus, and this is the Message version, which is a little different than the NIV, but I love it because I like the tone here. I think it's probably how Jesus was feeling. Jesus went straight to the temple and threw out everyone who had set up shop, buying and selling. He kicked over tables, literally kicked over tables, of the loan sharks and the stalls of the dove merchants. And then he quoted this text. My house was designated a house of prayer, but you have made it a hangout for thieves. Ooh, imagine if you were running like this church and someone said, oh, this is thieves. You made this a house of thieves. That would be not good. Now there was room for the blind and the crippled to get in. They came to Jesus and he healed them. So what happened here is Jesus saw this unjust structure and he did something about it. He looked and he saw, you know what, there's a lot of different ways I could love these Gentiles, these non-Jewish people. I could go up to them and say hi. I could give them cookies. I could try to make them feel welcome. But the reality is the whole structure of what was happening was hurting them. It wasn't good for them. It was a place where they couldn't actually encounter God. So what Jesus decided to do was to change it. He actually did something about it, and he did that because he knew it was the best way to love other people. An unjust situation actually happened really recently at UC San Diego at the campus that I work on. We have this thing on campus at UCSD called Admit Day, and it's when anybody who got into the campus and is deciding to decide if they want to go to the university or not, so they got their acceptance letter, and they're like, okay, do I want to go to the campus? They all come on this day to learn about the different clubs on campus, check out different classes, et cetera, et cetera. It's like the big check out the university day. And so what happens during this day is there are some students who can't actually afford to stay in hotels nearby or to go to the campus. And so it's really cool. There's a part of the campus who hosts an overnight program where specifically students who wouldn't be able to normally afford to go visit the campus can actually check out the campus. So it's a really cool program. I love it. It's awesome. And a lot of those students who go to this are minority students and a lot of minority ethnicities. There's Black students, and specifically I'm going to talk today about the Latino students. So there's Latino students, a lot of them, who went to this event. And what happened is the morning of the event, they walk out of their room on campus, walk out of the door, and on the ground as they walk out in chalk are all these racist comments specifically against Latino students. It was targeting the Latino students who were staying there and going to check out the campus. An example of something that was said there, and I won't totally say it, and I won't go into more than this, but it said like F Mexicans, and fill in the blank there. It was right out on the ground as these students who are trying to decide if they want to go to this campus. It's right out in front of them, which I don't know about you, but that would make me not want to go to the campus. And not only that was it there, but as they were touring campus the rest of the day, those racial remarks were written on walls, were written on the ground, were written all over campus. Someone went around campus to put all these racist comments there specifically to make these students feel uncomfortable and not want to go to the campus. It was hard, it's messed up, it was not good. It was not a good moment. A lot of these students felt really hurt, unwelcome, and honestly some of them a little bit scared. And it was very difficult. What I want to talk to you about today, what I want to share with you today though, is about how one of our InterVarsity students, Joy, reacted to the situation. Joy isn't Latino. She's already been a student on campus. Basically, this whole scenario didn't affect her. It didn't need to affect her. It didn't have to do with her at all. But she decided to hunger and thirst for righteousness. She decided to let it affect her. So the day after this happened, she went to our Latino Resource Center on campus, where a lot of those students hang out, are there for each other, there's resources there. She went there to listen to their stories and to comfort them. A couple days later, when she was leading a Bible study she normally leads, they spent a whole chunk of the Bible study. Instead of studying the Bible, they prayed for the students who were hurt by the situation. They prayed for them and just prayed that God would be able to comfort them during this time and help them to not feel as, hurt as these students did. And even later in the week, she ended up going to an event that they hosted talking about the racist comments here. Joy basically let this situation impact her. And the reason I share this, and I think there's actually a picture. Is there a picture in the slideshow? I want you to meet Joy, if it's up there. That's Joy. I'm on that side. Joy is on, it's your left. Your left, my right. Your left is Joy. She is a second year on our campus, a second year student. And that's how she reacted to the situation. And the reason I bring her up, and the reason I wanted to share this story in the first place, is because justice and righteousness was the driving force of her reaction here. She actually let this impact her, and she knew that this wasn't right, that students shouldn't be called these names, that students shouldn't feel this way, and she decided not to just sit around and be like, oh, that sucks, okay, and move on. She actually decided to let it impact her and let it be the driving force of her faith and her action. She was able to pray for these students, to tell some of these students about Jesus. She was able to do something about the situation. And the reason I share her story is because Joy really inspires me, and I want to be more like her, and I know that sometimes I'm not like that. Sometimes I hear about something, hear about a situation. I might post something on Facebook and then move on, but it's easy for me to just kind of move on and drown out the noise. But that's not how Jesus wants us to react in these situations. What Jesus wants us to do is actually, when unjust things happen, when we see something wrong, when we hear about people who don't have enough to eat in the community, when we hear about people being shot and killed in Orlando, when we hear about these horrific situations, God doesn't want us to just sit around and do nothing. He actually wants it to drive us, be the driver of us to actually do something about it. And that's actually what it means as a Christian to love people. It's one of the most loving things we can do for people is to do something about unjust situations. But how do we do this? It feels like a big thing. It feels like, okay, well, we should do something about it, but what do we do about it? That kind of feels like a big topic. So I have a few practical ideas for us. Number one, listen to God. The ways that we can, it's easy for us to look at the world and see something that's unjust, and we have our own view about justice. For example, I'm going to go to the Orlando tragedy that happened recently. With that situation, there's actually people across the nation who say, oh yeah, that was a good thing, that should have happened. There's actually even Christian people, and I think even a pastor in Sacramento or something, who said something along the lines of, oh, that should have happened, they deserved it. Well, we know as a church, because we know God and we know the Bible, that's not true, that these lives are sacred, they were sacred, and that was wrong, and that shouldn't have happened, right? We know that, but the only way we know that is by knowing God. And the way to know God is to listen to Him, to read the Bible, to pray, to come to church, to get involved in a small group, to do things and be in places where we can listen to God. The second thing that we can do is listening to others. I think it's really tempting for us to see an unjust situation and then try to jump right in and fix it, right? I'm totally a fixer, so I go into any situation. If I see something wrong, I want to fix it right away. But sometimes when you do that, you actually don't do the right thing because you never actually listened to the people who were affected by the situations. So instead of jumping online and donating to any old organization that says it's for the Orlando victims, maybe what it looks like for you is actually going online and listening to the stories of some of those victims, to listen to the stories of people who are a part of the LGBT community in other areas of the country and how they feel like they're being hurt by different things and their reasons why different things are happening. It's good to listen. Listening is a good thing. And maybe it means if you have a friend who is gay or would say that they're a part of the LGBT community, go and listen to them. Listen to their story and ask them, hey, I know this situation happened. I know I'm Christian and that there's a lot of hostility there and stuff, but how did this situation impact you, or did it impact you anyway? Because I care about you and I want to hear about it. Go and listen to people, because that's the only way you know how to do the next step, which is doing something about it. Actually go and do something about it. Like I said, for me, it's way too easy for me to get involved, get really riled up on Facebook, maybe post something, and then just forget about it later. But actually do something about it. And what's great is this church does some awesome stuff. Go volunteer at the food pantry. If you see something unjust happening in the community, go get in a small group. If you're in a small group, get into one. They're awesome, and brainstorm a way that you can actually do something. Or if you see something unjust and you're like, I don't know what to do about this, this is scary, I know that this situation isn't right, but I don't know what to do, grab a friend here, talk to your small group, and brainstorm a way that you can get involved. There's just a lot of different ways that you can do things, and so it's not, and it may feel big, oh my gosh, justice, this is a huge issue, a huge topic, but what I love about this passage, and going back to the verse, it says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Jesus doesn't expect us to get everything perfect. He doesn't expect us to suddenly know how to be the most just people in the world. He doesn't expect that of us. But he knows that when we hunger and thirst for righteousness, when our hearts break for the world breaking around us, he knows that ultimately that's what's going to get us to act, and that's what's going to make his kingdom come on earth. And so what it really takes is just letting our hearts break for the things that break God's heart. And so that's basically what I had for us today. That's what I had, and I know that there's a few next steps there, but I wanted to say thank you for having me. It was really awesome to be able to speak in front of you and to be able to share with you what's on my heart. And I know I mentioned a little bit about what I'm doing at UC San Diego, and so if you want to hear more, there's a table in the back outside. I'll run back there afterwards, and I'd love to talk with you, and I have a few resources. Or if any of you are feeling like, I could come back to church after the second service. I know that's probably very few of you, but in the cafe after the second service, I'm going to be showing a little video of some of my college students sharing their testimonies and sharing a little bit more about what I'm doing. It's going to be a Q&A session, so if you want to ask me random questions about justice or Jesus or college students, I would love to share. That's basically what I have for you today, so I'll invite Dave back.
Thanks, Jen. Jen and I were talking about this topic over the week and just kind of batting around stuff. And I actually got online to our main covenant webpage. And so if you get home and you're like, I wonder what the covenant is doing with this whole idea of justice and mercy. We, as a covenant church, take this very seriously, and it's one of our main focuses of the covenant denomination. And you can go in there to the covenant, I've got it open here, but I'm like, really, we're doing this? This is so cool. They've got a whole thing where they're doing water for Flint. And so that's something that's happening in our own country. You're like, well, that's kind of weird. How do we get involved in that? And here the covenant is totally jumped on board and are doing stuff with that one. They have sections, they have ministry sections for compassion, mercy, justice along racial righteousness, criminal justice, ministry development, immigration, and then, of course, Covenant World Relief, which does stuff all around the world when things happen. They are usually first on the scene in major things that go along around the world. So, if you're kind of wondering, maybe this is a way you can get involved as far as being a missionary and getting involved in compassion, mercy, and justice stuff. So, let's get let's go. Yeah. The website. The website is covchurch.org. COV. Church.org, because apparently they feel like we can't spell covenant church. So just Cov Church is how it is. .org. And we'll close our service with a song, and then I'll pray. And do find Jen after the service and ask her some more questions.
Isn't there a commandment about